What kind of progress have we made looking back on the past year from the time that we had the first community forum for economic development to this year? At the last forum, we talked about two views of economic development. What I call the old view and the new view. You can guess which one I like best. But let me just review these and see what I mean by it. Okay, here's the old view. The key here is that what we mean by economic development is attracting and retaining businesses. I'd like to have a nickel for every time I've heard people in public view say, well, I'm for economic development. What I want to do is get some businesses to come to South Bend. Period. That's what economic development means. I want to talk about this in a minute, but once you start out with that premise, then you have a limited group that you talk to. And in fact, the group is, of course, business that you're trying to attract, developers, you're trying to promote projects, and experts, people who would know about the esoteric science of economic development, professorial types and so on. The third element then of this view is that the way we need to promote this economic development is by creating a, quote, pro-business environment. And I think this is these three things taken together are the way that we understand economic development, not just in South Bend or St. Joseph County, but I mean widespread. This is a view that is sort of unthinkingly accepted really in many places. I think there's some problems with this old view, and let me just tell you what I think they are. Well, I think we have limited criteria for success. And when we talk about attracting and retaining businesses, what we're really focused on here is, well, how many businesses did we attract? And how big were they? And there's, of course, a reason for this, and the reason is that by attracting business and encouraging existing businesses to stay here and to grow, the objective, it's hope, is that we'll increase the number of jobs, and that will also increase the tax base. And I think, to be fair, this is what people who advocate this have in mind, that we want to increase jobs and we want to have a greater tax base. There's certainly nothing wrong with jobs, and there's certainly nothing wrong with increasing the tax base. But I think it's a little narrow, and I think we ought to ask some other questions. We ought to evaluate these businesses that we're trying to bring here. Are they hiring workers from our community? Are they providing not just jobs, but good jobs? Jobs that pay good wages and provide good benefits? Are they promoting the employment of minorities and women? Are they helping growth in the downtown and the inner city? We know there's a tendency for businesses and developers to want to develop on the fringe of the city, as Reverend Boston mentioned. Are these businesses keeping profits in our community? Are they local businesses? Or are they national chains whose profits go to places far away from here? And finally, are these businesses that we're trying to attract protecting the environment? So these are all questions that we need to ask, not just how many businesses are coming and how many jobs, but what are they bringing to our community? Okay, the second problem with this whole view is that when you think the reference group is only business developers and the experts, then you have pretty limited room at the table for anybody else. And other people's expertise from the community is not really recognized, and other people's concerns and interests are not really represented at the table. So I think far better to involve all members of the community in the economic development decision. If we want economic development to truly benefit everyone in our community, then everyone in the community needs to have a seat at the table. They need to be represented in the decisions that affect them. Finally, what I think is wrong with the old view is that it leads to a limited confidence and vision about what we are. Just as Reverend Boston said, everyone in Milwaukee said, well, geez, Milwaukee's such a rotten city, who'd want to come here? The view of economic development that fosters a pro-business environment has led to a view that, well, since we really don't have too much to offer here, we really need to attract the businesses and the developers by basically making it as profitable for them as possible to come here. And so how do we do that? Well, we'll keep our wages low. When we tried to promote a living wage in South Bend not too long ago, the group leading the charge against us was the Chamber of Commerce. And they said, no, we can't have a living wage here. We need to promote economic development. We need to attract businesses. And the head of Project Future, the group and the county is responsible for promoting economic development, went to the county council not long ago and told them, you have to get rid of your prevailing wage ordinance. We can't pay prevailing wages in this county. We're trying to attract this big $1 billion investment that we're trying to attract here. So we can't have these prevailing wages. So it leads to an idea that we should keep our wages low, that we should reduce our business taxes. We have to give every company that wants one an abatement, which of course means that those businesses that don't pay those taxes, somebody pays them, and guess who it is? And then we I think, limited the accountability that we expect from these businesses that we're so eager and so desperate to try to attract to our community. And I have more to talk about that later. But rather than do that, I think it's better to attract business by making ourselves richer rather than by making ourselves poorer. Rather than keeping our wages low and giving away our tax revenue, what if we improve our quality of life? Improve our schools, our parks, libraries, environment, neighborhoods, etc. To attract business by making our community a valuable and exciting place to want to live in and want to work in and want to be in. Attracting business is a good objective. I'm not criticizing that as an objective, but I think the way to do it is to improve our community. And another good way, as we've seen from the Milwaukee experience, is by linking these tax incentives to the community benefits. You know, what are the businesses we're trying to attract bringing to the table? And it's fine to subsidize and to encourage with tax benefits companies if they're really providing some decent benefits to our community. Okay, well, I think when you put this together, this view, this old view, which I think is passing in South Bend, and the new view, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute, But the old view kind of puts us in a box. So we're really hemmed in, and it's difficult to know what to do. So there's a little picture for you. And those of you falling asleep now, there's a picture you can wake up. So this is a little box. We're in a box, I think. We're hemmed in by low wages, by the shift in tax burden, by this limited accountability that arises from the old view. And it leads us to desperately seeking development. So what should we do with this old view? Where should we, you see this little address box on the top. What should we do with this old view? Well, this is what I think. All right, well, what is the new view then? The new view means, and this has been something the Community Forum has emphasized many times, the new view means, the new view is that economic development means increasing living standards and opportunities for all area residents. And we say all area residents, we mean especially those that have been left out of economic development. The low-income people, the people without jobs, the people who haven't benefited from development, they need to share in economic development as well as the rest of the community. Everyone needs to share. So it means, secondly, instead of having a limited room at the table, we need to have democratic participation and involvement. Because we need to involve people, and economic development needs to be about people's lives. And it must mean jobs for people who don't have jobs. It must mean wages that a family can live on for workers who are now earning poverty-level wages. It must mean building wealth for people who now have no wealth. It must mean development for communities that are now being left behind. It must mean hope for people who now don't have any hope. So economic development must mean this. It means making a change in the quality of people's lives. Well, how are we going to do this? I think the way to do it is by improving our quality of life. The quality of life is first of all the best way to attract business here. And secondly, it also directly increases opportunities for people. By improving our quality of life, by improving our schools, we improve people's lives. By improving our parks, our neighborhoods, our libraries, we are directly increasing opportunities for people. And that's what economic development needs to be about. It needs to be about community benefit agreements. We have a lot to learn from Milwaukee in this, but I think this is something that we need to investigate and to see how this might work in South Bend. Now, I don't want to say that everything, however, is within our control. Economic development is a broad process. We can't solve everything here in South Bend or St. Joseph County. And some of these things involve national issues, but there's a whole host of issues. And it's affordable housing, fair taxes, fair trade, national health insurance, minimum wage. So anyway, it's a whole group of things, but there are certain things that certainly we can do here. So this is, I think, the new view of economic development, and if you'll pardon me, I just want to take a minute to try to make clear some terms that I think are often confused. When we're talking about attracting and retaining business, what is often considered to be economic development, we're talking about a specific process. And the expansion of new and existing businesses, in the sense that these businesses are expanding, they're bringing new factories or offices, new buildings are being put up, new equipment. This is what, excuse me, but economists would call business investment. So this is an important component of economic development. But it is, well, first of all, it's directly a component of economic growth. Business investment is one aspect of economic growth. And there are others. Economic growth is a broader category. It's an increase in all goods and services, not just increased buildings and manufacturing property. Economic growth is public as well as private. So that when we improve our schools, that's a service that we're providing, and that's a part of economic growth. And the salaries that people get from teaching are just as important as the salaries that people get in the private sector. And the schools presumably are creating an educated workforce. That educated workforce is a key component of producing more productively, and this is a key aspect that improves our economic growth. But economic growth, it must be realized, is well, to be frank, it's bad. It can be bad as well as good. It's just simply counting up all the goods and services that we produce. So if we have a CAFO, I'll talk about CAFOs later, but probably you're familiar with the concentrated animal feeding operations that are a subject of discussion in the South County. Well, if we create a CAFO and we're able to produce more milk, that's more increase in economic growth. We're creating more stuff. But if the CAFO also produces more pollution, and we have increased costs for medical problems, well, that adds to the economic growth too. And if the roads break down because of all the heavy trucks and we have to go repair them, well, that's adding to economic growth too. So it's all adds up, but it's not necessarily all good. So when you hear somebody say, well, I'm for economic growth, you need to say, well, what kind of economic growth is that? And there's a particular kind of economic growth that is economic development. And that's economic development is the economic growth that increases the living standards and the opportunities for all. So economic growth is simply an increase in the size of the pie. But economic development is about not only increasing the pie, but dividing it up fairly. Okay, well, I think understanding what we're talking about is very important, but concretely, what's happened over the past year? What kind of progress have we made toward this new view? Well, I think we've made a lot of progress, and one part of that progress has been to change the conversation, I think, around town. So if we look at in an early draft of the city plan, they have a chapter on economic development. And the first sentence of the economic development chapter is what you see here. And it says, economic development involves attracting and retaining businesses to provide jobs and expand a community's tax base. I don't criticize that people wrote that because that's basically it's what's in the air. That's what people assume. That's the common assumption about economic development. But through some conversations and discussion, the final draft of city plan, that first sentence is now replaced with the following. Economic development is the process of increasing living standards and opportunities for community residents. So I think there's some increased understanding about what economic development really is. Okay, what else has happened? I think we've made some important steps in addressing the issue of quality of life. One of the important ones was the LaSalle Library. The library board wanted to close LaSalle Library. And they said, well, you know, there's no more stores over there in LaSalle Square. They've all gone out to beyond Portage Prairie up by Blackthorn. So, well, people probably not going to want to take out too many books in LaSalle Square anymore. And neighbors in that community, Jerry Niskoski was one of the leaders of this struggle, and said, no, people need a library. It's important to our quality of life. And we can't just ignore LaSalle Square. We have to focus on this. We have to improve the quality of life in that area, and that's one way that will promote economic development in that area. And the library is now open. It's now increased its circulation. This was an important victory. Another issue, South Bend Railway. There was a group that wanted to resurrect some old railroad lines and run a train right through the middle of a bunch of neighborhoods on the west side. We're going to transport people from Chicago to Notre Dame football games. And they're going to deliver coal to Notre Dame. Well, I think the Notre Dame's decided, after some discussions with city officials, well, they maybe didn't want that coal from this railroad company. And I think this was something that the mayor and the city officials and the council got behind and said this is an affront to our quality of life, and this is not economic development that we see it. And that proposal was defeated. Another issue, the Potawatomi conservatories and greenhouses. This was initially thought that these had to close because of the budget. Again, people got mobilized to say that this is a question of quality of life. This needs to stay open in our community, and it is now open. Okay, here are these CAFOs I was talking about. The Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation. The Walnut Grove Dairy in the South County. Group want to put 3,500 cows together on a very small space as part of what Governor Daniels calls his plan for rural economic development. Well, this was considered to be a threat to public health, to family farms. We can't declare victory in this one, unfortunately, as of yet. These plans are still ongoing. However, there was important victory with regard to CAFOs, and this was a county health ordinance that Mark Nelson from Public Health directed. Was pulled together a group of dedicated people who work very hard and in a very democratic fashion to fashion a health ordinance that would be relevant to CAFOs. And this was passed unanimously by the county council, and hopefully now our health is better protected by this ordinance. So another victory here. Okay, another aspect of trying to implement this new view is to try to put forward these ideas in the public forum and to promote education and to try to get people involved. And I think this has happened a lot in this past year. There have been a number of educational forums on predatory lending, on CAFOs, on vacant and abandoned houses, on the circuit breaker, on local currency, the idea that we should keep our currency within the community and focus on promoting local business and local development. And, well, we're having another annual forum, the community forum. I think that's good. So this, I think, is progress.